Hey guys, thank you for tuning back in. We're going to check out part two of our motivation unit. There's only two parts, so hopefully you've already watched the second part, and this video will wrap up what else you need to know. So let's take it from the top here. What's going to be included in this part? We're going to talk about eating, sexual motivation, social motivation, a little bit of careers in psychology, and also how motivation is applied to the workplace. So, couple things. Let's start with eating. And the question here is, what makes you hungry? Why are people so hungry all the time? One of them is having low glucose, which is your blood sugar. So if you haven't eaten in a while, your blood sugar levels go down, and that makes you feel hungry. You feel kind of slow and sluggish sometimes. Another thing that makes you hungry is the stimulation of a part of your brain called the lateral hypothalamus. And I don't know if you remember when we studied the brain, but we talked about the hypothalamus being involved in hunger and thirst. So hypo was for hunger, thalamus was for thirst. So lateral hypothalamus is just the side of that part of the brain. And when you stick an electrical electrode into the brain of a rat or a mouse and stimulate that part of the brain, they get hungry. They want to eat a lot. Now, obviously, you don't do that to people. You don't, but in experiments with rats, that's what they do. And here's a picture of how much they will eat. They will just keep eating and eating and eating. Now, there's another part of your hypothalamus, the ventromedial, and if you stimulate that part, you lose your appetite. You're not hungry. So there's a trick way to remember this, and that is that the lateral hypothalamus, lat gives you a fat rat. So if you stimulate the lat, you get a fat rat. All right, what else makes you hungry? So some people think of hunger in terms of like the body having a weight thermostat, a set point. And if you lose weight, you go below your set point, you feel hungry and you want to eat to gain that weight back. And if you go above that, you feel full and you don't need to eat. So some people think of hunger in terms of a set point, like a thermostat. This can make losing weight real tough because if you start to lose weight, your set point changes, your metabolism changes, and losing more weight becomes even harder than losing the first few pounds. There's another thing with hunger called externals and internals. This is a way you can divide people up into these two categories in terms of their reaction when they see or smell food. So some people, when they see or smell food, it affects them and it makes them really hungry. Those people are called externals. They're affected by the external sight and smell of food. Internals only feel hungry based on their internal cues, like their blood sugar and their set point and stuff. So they're not affected by external sights and smells. They're called internals. So if you're an external, managing your weight can be more difficult. And people who are internals tend to not understand that because they're internals and they think everybody's like them, and it's easy to not eat food when you see it. But externals are wired differently. They see or smell food and they really want to eat it. Last thing on food is this idea of culture and what role does culture play. So all the things I've said so far about eating are true. Doesn't matter what culture you're in, they're part of the human experience. The thing that's different with culture is what you like to eat. So people in different parts of the world eat foods that are unique to those regions. I grew up on the coast. We ate a lot of oysters and clams and fish and shrimp. And so that was part of our culture. Other people who don't grow up with that maybe think oysters and clams are not that good. I love those. That was part of my culture. Okay, let's move on to sexual motivation. There's a lot of research on sex that started in the 40s and 50s with a guy named Alfred Kinsey. He kind of led the charge in terms of opening up sex and exploring it and researching it. He had a Kinsey Institute. He wrote this big Kinsey report that kind of shocked the public when it was released because it outlined all this information about sex, who was having sex, how much, what age, what they were doing, everything like that. Um, so there's a movie about him called Kinsey. Pretty good movie. I think it's rated R. You should get your parents' permission, but um, it's a pretty cool story, his life. So one of the things he noted was that there's something called the sexual response cycle. There's certain physiological changes people go through, from getting aroused to having sex to coming back to normal. These are the 4 stages. I'm not going to read them all. You can pause the video and read these and check them out. I'm going to move on to the next topic. The next topic is social motivation. With social motivation, there's something called achievement motivation. And there's this question of, why are some people so driven to achieve and other people not so much? And you probably know people like this in your life. Some people that get a lot done and they're just on the go all the time. So achievement motivation is defined as a desire for significant accomplishment. And high achievers are people who set their own goals and they tend to see difficulties as challenges. Like there's some roadblock to their goal. Well, they see it as a challenge and they're going to take it on and they're going to overcome it. Low achievers, on the other hand, are not motivated by their own goals. They're motivated by getting approval from others, getting praised by others, getting noticed by others. And when they come into a difficulty, when they run into a challenge or a difficulty, they can be put off by that. They don't see it as a challenge to overcome. They're just like, hey, this is too hard. I'm not going to try to overcome this difficulty. So as parents, like I'm a parent of 3 kids, teachers, coaches, people want to know, how do you get people to be high achievers? And they think that there's 2 routes to this development of being a high achiever. One is that when kids are little, preschool, elementary school, they learn to associate achievement with positive emotions. So achieving things has a good vibe to it, and that becomes part of it's like they're classically conditioned to associate achievement with positive things. The other root cause is cognitive. They think that when kids are little, if they attribute the achievement to their own competence, like I achieved this because I tried hard, because I had skill, because I practiced, then you end up raising your own expectations for yourself. So you could think of that like a kid learning to play piano, a kid learning to say the alphabet, anything you're learning, you could have the emotional roots or the cognitive roots. All right. So we've been talking about motivation in all these different ways. Let's back it up for a second. There are 2 broad types of motivation, called extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. And extrinsic motivation is when you're pushed by external rewards or punishments to do something. So you have a job and you're motivated to go to it every day because you're scared of getting fired, or you're being pushed to do it because you need the paycheck and you're trying to save money to buy a car, you need the paycheck. So that would be extrinsic motivation to do the job. Intrinsic motivation would be like, you love the job because you love doing it. You get a lot of satisfaction out of doing the job. So teachers take teachers, for example. I love teaching. I love working with students. I love watching people grow and develop. I'm motivated. I like being there. So I'm intrinsically motivated to teach. If you were extrinsically motivated to teach, you probably wouldn't be a very good teacher because you're just worried about getting fired or just worrying about a paycheck. You probably wouldn't really be worried about students. Okay, let's talk about how extrinsic and intrinsic motivation apply to work. So workplaces use psychological knowledge to try to improve their productivity. And People who study this have noticed that there's two ways that managers tend to interact with employees. One of them is theory X and one of them is theory Y. So theory X managers view employees as extrinsically motivated. So they use rewards and punishments to manage their employees. Theory Y managers encourage intrinsic motivation by creating comfortable, stimulating workplace. So theory Y managers would think of like the Google workplace. I don't know if you know about them, but they have like free lunch and they have a coffee bar and they have nap pods and people come and go. They don't have to be there at an exact time. And the managers trust the people to work hard and to get their job done. Theory X would be like an old school factory where you clock in when you get there. You have to be there right at 8 in the morning. You clock out at 5. You have a 1 hour lunch. Anybody who doesn't do that, you get punished. Your pay gets cut. So very strict type of workplace. Okay, that's just a touch on something called organizational psychology or industrial psychology. Usually it's called IO for industrial organizational psychology. It's a whole field. I'm just giving you theory X and theory Y. But here are 3 types of psychologists that work in that field. Personnel psychologists are about hiring and keeping employees and evaluating them. If you're a big company that has like 500 or 1,000 or 10,000 workers, hiring and keeping and evaluating employees is super important. And there are psychologists who work on that. Organizational psychologists study work environments, management styles, how to make more productivity. And human factors psychology explore how machines' environments can be designed to fit our natural perception. So think about the dashboard in your car, your ability to see things, to reach where the radio is, to reach the heater, to touch things, to see things. All of that is designed in part by human factors psychology. So anything like that, psychologists are used. So, a couple other slides. That's the end. Hope you've enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, see me in class or email me. Thank you.